There comes a moment in life when the person who was once confused, overgiving, and constantly questioning themselves begins to see clearly. Not loudly, not dramatically, but powerfully. That is the moment an empath awakens. And when that awakening happens in the presence of a narcissist, something shifts that they never anticipated. For a long time, the dynamic seemed predictable. The empath tried harder, loved deeper, forgave faster. The narcissist controlled the narrative, rewrote reality, and fed off the emotional reactions they could provoke. It felt like a storm the empath could never quite outrun. But here is what no one tells you. Empaths are not weak. They are untrained power. And once they understand the game, once they recognize manipulation for what it is, the battlefield changes entirely. The awakened empath stops explaining, stops defending, stops begging to be understood. And in that stillness, in that quiet withdrawal of emotional supply, the narcissist begins to feel something unfamiliar: loss of control. Because the narcissist's greatest advantage was your confusion. When clarity enters the room, manipulation loses its grip. This silent war is not fought with shouting or revenge. It is fought with boundaries, with self-trust, with emotional regulation. The awakened empath learns that love without respect is self-betrayal. They begin to see gaslighting as distortion, guilt as a tactic, and charm as strategy. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. What makes this transformation so powerful is that it does not announce itself. There is no dramatic confrontation, no need for validation. The empath simply steps back, observes, and refuses to participate in the cycle anymore. That quiet refusal destabilizes the entire system the narcissist built. When an empath awakens, they no longer fight for the narcissist's approval. They fight for their own peace. And that is the silent war they never saw coming. There was a day in your life when something subtle but irreversible shifted. It did not come with fireworks. It did not come with a dramatic confrontation. It came with clarity. The fog lifted. The excuses you used to make for them no longer made sense. The confusion that once kept you spinning began to settle into awareness. And in that moment, you woke up. Before that day, you believed that if you just explained yourself better, loved harder, stayed calmer, forgave quicker, things would change. You carried the emotional weight of the relationship on your shoulders. You thought empathy meant endurance. You thought patience meant strength. But what you did not see was how your emotional availability was being used against you. Every reaction fed the cycle. Every tear, every defense, every attempt to prove your goodness became fuel for someone who thrived on control. The day you woke up, you stopped reacting. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started understanding. You recognized the patterns, the blame shifting, the gaslighting, the subtle digs disguised as jokes, the silent treatments designed to punish you. And instead of scrambling to fix it, you observed it. That observation was your power returning. Silence, for you, used to feel like weakness. It felt like surrender. But now it became discipline. You realized you did not need to attend every argument you were invited to. You did not need to defend your reality to someone committed to distorting it. You did not need to beg for decency. And when you stopped engaging in the chaos, something profound happened. The narcissists lost their rhythm. Control depends on reaction. Manipulation depends on access. And when you withdrew emotionally, When you stopped over-explaining, over-apologizing, and over-performing, the entire dynamic shifted. They could feel it. The old tactics did not land the same way. The guilt did not penetrate. The intimidation did not shake you. Your calm became unsettling to them. This is the part they never anticipate. They expect you to chase, to plead, to return to the familiar dance. But you did not. You regulated yourself. You strengthened your boundaries. You trusted your perception instead of their narrative. And in doing so, you reclaimed authority over your own mind. Waking up did not make you cruel. It made you clear. It did not harden your heart. It sharpened your discernment. You learned that compassion without boundaries is self-abandonment. You learned that love does not require you to shrink. And most importantly, you learned that silence can be a statement louder than any argument. When you stopped trying to control how they saw you, you started controlling how you saw yourself. That internal shift is what destabilizes a narcissistic dynamic. Because once you no longer need their validation, their leverage disappears. Once you no longer fear their withdrawal, their threats lose impact. Once you no longer accept distorted narratives, their confusion tactics collapse. The day you woke up was the day you stopped fighting for the relationship and started fighting for your peace. It was the day you understood that your empathy was never your weakness. It was your strength, misdirected. And now that it is grounded in self-respect, it becomes something unshakable, something steady, something they cannot manipulate, something that stands firm even when they attempt to provoke, something that no longer bends under pressure, something that chooses calm over chaos, and truth over illusion, and dignity over drama, and growth over fear and self, trust over self-doubt. And that is the power that keeps expanding within you without asking for permission. There was a time when your energy was scattered. You were hyper-focused on keeping the peace, reading the room, anticipating moods, softening your tone, shrinking your needs. You called it love. You called it patience. But in reality, your nervous system was on constant alert. You were surviving a dynamic that quietly drained you, while convincing you it was your responsibility to fix it. Then something shifted. It was not loud. It was not announced. It was internal. You stopped pouring your energy into convincing someone to treat you well. You stopped trying to decode mixed signals. You stopped rehearsing explanations in your head. And in that subtle withdrawal, the entire game changed. Narcissistic dynamics rely on emotional supply. They rely on your reactions, your tears, your arguments, your attempts to prove your worth. When you were entangled, your energy was feeding a system designed to keep you off balance. But the awakened empath understands something powerful. Attention is currency, and you stopped paying. When your energy shifted back to yourself, you became grounded. You began asking different questions. Instead of wondering how to make them understand you, you asked why you were tolerating misunderstanding. Instead of trying to win the argument, you asked whether the argument was even worth attending. That shift is not weakness, it is strategy. Victory in this silent war does not look like revenge. It looks like regulation. It looks like boundaries that do not require explanation. It looks like walking away from circular conversations. It looks like refusing to accept distorted versions of reality. When you stopped engaging in chaos, chaos lost its audience. The awakened empath does not become cold. They become clear. You still feel deeply. You still care. But you no longer confuse empathy with access. Not everyone deserves your emotional labor. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability. And when you finally understood that, the power dynamic tilted. They may have tried to provoke you. They may have escalated tactics when the old ones stopped working. But you noticed something different within yourself. The urgency was gone. The fear of abandonment was shrinking. The need for approval was dissolving. And when those hooks no longer land, control slips away. This is what game over truly means. It is not about defeating someone. It is about exiting a system that required you to abandon yourself. The moment you stopped explaining your boundaries and simply enforced them, the script changed. The moment you trusted your perception instead of their gaslighting, the fog cleared. The moment you chose peace over proving a point, you won. An awakened empath understands that their energy is sacred. Where you invest it determines your reality. When you redirect it toward healing, growth, and self-respect, you become unshakable. You are no longer easy to manipulate because you are no longer desperate to be chosen. You choose yourself, and that is the quiet victory they never prepared for. Because when your center of gravity moves inward, when your validation comes from alignment instead of approval, when your calm is rooted in self-trust rather than compliance, you become steady in a way that cannot be rattled, grounded in a way that cannot be baited, focused in a way that cannot be distracted, and powerful in a way that no longer seeks to conquer, but simply refuses to participate in what diminishes you. And that refusal is the final move that ends the game, without ever needing to declare it for a long time. Your strength went unnoticed, even by you. It did not look loud. It did not look dominant. It looked like patience. It looked like compassion. It looked like giving people the benefit of the doubt long after they had stopped earning it. You were underestimated because your power was quiet. And in narcissistic dynamics, quiet is often mistaken for weak. They believed they had you figured out. They saw your empathy as leverage. They assumed your forgiveness was infinite. They mistook your self-reflection for self-doubt. Every time you tried to communicate calmly, every time you searched for mutual understanding, they read it as proof that you would stay. They thought your heart guaranteed your tolerance. What they never understood is that empathy is not fragility, it is depth. And depth becomes formidable when it is paired with awareness. The awakened empath does not transform into someone else. You become more fully yourself. The difference is that your kindness is no longer blind. Your compassion is no longer self-sacrificing. Your listening is no longer an invitation for manipulation. You begin to see patterns instead of promises. You begin to trust behavior over words. And once that shift happens, your spirit becomes unbreakable. They never saw it coming because your growth was internal. It happened in the moments you chose not to react, in the pauses where you observed instead of defended, in the quiet decisions to detach emotionally before you detached physically. You were building strength while they were still relying on old tactics. Narcissistic control depends on predictability. They predict you will chase. They predict you will over-explain. They predict you will absorb blame to restore harmony. But when you stopped following that script, when you responded with calm instead of chaos, when you met provocation with indifference, the foundation of their control cracked. Your unseen strength lies in your nervous system learning safety within yourself. You no longer panic at the threat of withdrawal. You no longer scramble to fix what you did not break. You no longer internalize distortions of reality. That stability is disorienting to someone who relied on your emotional turbulence. An unbreakable spirit is not one that never feels pain. It is one that feels pain and still chooses dignity. You grieved, you doubted, you questioned yourself, but you kept returning to truth. You kept choosing growth over retaliation. You kept strengthening boundaries, even when it felt uncomfortable. That is resilience at its highest level. They never saw the awakened empath coming, because they were focused on control, not evolution. While they repeated patterns, you broke them. While they escalated manipulation, you deepened self-trust. While they sought dominance, you cultivated discernment. And discernment is dangerous to anyone who depends on deception. Now your presence is different. You do not announce your boundaries. You embody them. You do not argue for respect. You require it. You do not shrink to maintain connection. You expand into authenticity and allow those who cannot meet you there to fall away. Your strength was always there. It was simply buried under conditioning that taught you love meant endurance. Now you understand that love without respect is self-abandonment, and that your empathy is most powerful when it is anchored in self-worth and guided by clarity and protected by boundaries that stand firm even when tested and reinforced by a spirit that has learned it can survive disappointment without surrendering its identity, and that quiet confidence becomes the force that changes every dynamic you walk into, without needing permission or applause. And this is where everything comes together. The awakened empath does not need to prove their strength, because it radiates without performance. You no longer crave closure from someone co-emitted to misunderstanding you. You no longer wait for accountability from someone invested in avoidance. The need to win, to explain, to be validated slowly dissolves. What replaces it is something far more powerful: self-alignment. You begin to realize that the greatest victory was never about changing them. It was about reclaiming you. Every boundary you hold reinforces your worth. Every time you choose silence over chaos, you strengthen your nervous system. Every moment you walk away from disrespect, you affirm your value. The narcissist may never fully grasp what shifted. They may label you distant, cold, different. But you know the truth. You are not hardened. You are healed. You are not withdrawn. You are discerning. You are no longer participating in dynamics that require you to abandon yourself to be loved. And that is the final transformation. You do not fight the silent war anymore. You outgrow it.